Hey there, welcome to the presentation of my game I built with Datastar. It's called BuzzStar. Let's play the game. It's a game about reflexes, so we will start by creating a room. As this is the intro, let's call it the intro room. Alright, we can see here that we are the admin of the intro room. And then you can invite your friends to join it. So we have in the upper right corner Agnès Roussel, and in the bottom right corner Suzanne Bourgeois. So Agnès and Suzanne, you can click on this to send them a buzzer, and the quickest one to click it when it turns red. Oh, clear victory for Suzanne. We can send them another buzzer, and we can see that we have here the response time. We can send them another buzzer as well. Oh, and this time Suzanne was really fast and won the game. Congrats to her. So Datastar is a hypermedia framework. What is hypermedia? You might be familiar with it if you come from frameworks such as HTMX. Basically, it's all how the web works. Like the web is just using your browser to make requests over the network to servers that will give you hypermedia documents. What's hypermedia? HTML is hypermedia. That's how the web was first built. I'd like to think of it as text with instructions. So you have, for example, this paragraph of text. You can see style color blue, so that's the instruction on how to display the text. And then you have Grachapan, the actual text here. Another famous example is a link. The web is documents referencing each other, so it's very practical. So the text is click me, but the instructions for the text are take me to google.com if you click me. So afterwards, the JavaScript catastrophe obfuscated this because we now use the JavaScript capabilities of the browser to render DOM. And some libraries like HTMX or Datastar are quite popular right now to bring back hypermedia. So basically text with instructions, and we're just using those libraries to have a bit more instructions, and we will see that we can do some more advanced stuff like the game I just showed you. Speaking about the game, let's dive into the code, because the motto of Datastar is that it solves the frontend for you. And I tend to agree with that. And so they say that the only job you have left to do is organize your backend. And it was a bit confusing as first. This is why I'm doing this video. So I will be giving you an example on how to build with Quart. The BuzzRoom game, let's take a look at the folders we have here. We will store data in this. So here we have the intro room that we just created for the demo. We use Datastar PY, which is a SDK helper to interface with Datastar from Python. In static, we don't have much thing. We have the Datastar as the only JavaScript library. I use Pyco CSS, which is a small bootstrap CSS library to make it look a bit better without diving in the CSS that much. It's just a quick prototype. We only have 2 templates on what you just saw. So one template for the index page and one template for every room. And that's all, I guess. Let's dive into the code. So we will be using Quart as our backend technology. Why Quart? Because I come from Flask, and you don't want to be using Flask because even if you can span multiple workers, you will still have one worker per connection open. So you have to use an async framework. The async portage of Flask is Quart, so this is what I will be using. You can also use Fast API or other async library, it's up to you really. We don't import a lot of libraries, only Faker to generate fake names. This is a great little library to generate fake data, very useful for testing purposes. And we use those two, this function and this class from the datastar.py package, but we will come back on this later. Let's start with the index page. So you can see that our first route is simply rendering this template on .html, which means that everything that you see here, the back and forth here, the smooth transitions, the inline validation that you can see right here, the room, there's no backend magic to it. To use Datastar, you have to import it as a script right here. It's a very tiny library, so a few kilobytes, really quick and fast to load and really powerful for how small it is. We define our header right there, and we can see something interesting happening here, which is that we are defining a signal with data signals clicked. So we define a signal clicked and we give it a value of false. We can do this in any HTML element. I added here on the page a quick snippet to show all signals at all time, and here we can see we have this signal clicked defined with a value of false. Next, we have, for example, the div inside it with another attribute data show, and the value of data show is linked to the clicked signal that we just defined. So it's a bit like Alpine if you use this library, xshow and xdata. So we define some variables, and then we can use these variables to do stuff to other elements, like displaying them or not, attributing classes. For example, for the play game here, I can give him a class of, I can remove the cloak class, and when this button is pressed, data on click, I will switch the value of the click attribute I just show here. So this div will disappear because the click value will change and I have nothing else to do, just like in Alpine. It's how you get the front-end reactivity to the signals you define. We add this little modifier here, view transition, so that we get some smooth transitions from one div to the next. And the next one you see here, it's with data show and the opposite value of click. So when I click, I switch the click variable and I can easily go from one div to the other like this, and you see the smooth transition happening here. In this we have a button back where we can go back to the first div just by using click to revert to the initial state. And then we have our first element that will interact with the backend. We have an input here, so we can type some text in it, and this input will have will make use of the data bind attribute. So what it makes is that it will tie the variable I declare here, input value, to the content of the input. And as you can see here, input value now has the value of inline validation. And on input, that means every time the user types something in it with a debounce, because I don't want to request the root, so I set up a debounce of half a second here. It will send a request to validate name. Now, validate name is our first example of front-end and back-end interaction, so we will first do a very simple one-shot signal with it. We use an asynchronous function thanks to Quart, and we load the request of the arguments of the request, and we see that in the arguments of the request there will be a key Datastar that will be put there by the Datastar, which will contain all the signals that are present in the page. So in this way I can retrieve the value of input value right there. So I can retrieve what the user typed in his input box here. And we will try to check if this input value is valid or not. So we have a custom function like for this. The function is quite simple. It just checks if there is room in the input value, but you can do something more complex. You can use any function you call you like, and if it's valid, we will or not, we will return this piece of code here. So this needs a little explanation. Merge signals will change the signals that are present in the page. So if valid is true, I will use a server-sent event to put the valid name variable here to true. Now we might open the DevTools to see what's going on in the browser. And the really great thing about Datastar is that you can see what the backend is sending. So for example, here I type some text, and we can see here that we had some requests that were made to the backend server. You see with this request that they use the get method that we specified. They pass the signals here as arguments to the request, and let's take a look at the answer we get, and all answers that we're gonna send with Datastar will look like this. So we first have the event, that is merge signals or merge fragments, we will see that later, retry period, and then the data, and the data will be here, just that we send that valid names is false, because I haven't typed room entirely. And if I type yes, we can see that we sent a new event, and that we received true for valid name. Now valid name is now true for the page, and of course you can add some help for the user. For example, here invalid rule name will only show up if valid name is false. And once again, this is very easy to do with Datastar, because invalid rule name is just a div using data show equal the value of valid name. Okay, now let's go to our second example, which will use merge fragments, which will be just a tad bit more complicated for the room list here. So what I want to do is when the user clicks this button, it changes to updating, and it displays in real time the list of rooms that you have here that are available at any moment. Of course, I could have done this behavior of clicking and then you get this updating div just with signals, but we will do it another way, merge fragments, and we will see ways that is much better. So when we click on this, we send a GET request to this root here, join room, and what we will first do is define an event generator. And this event generator will first send you a merge fragment. So merge fragment is like merge signals, but you won't be replacing signals. You will be replacing an HTML component on the page. The only thing you have to make sure is that you have an ID, because it will look for this ID to do the switch. So what I want to do is return this button updating here with this little spinner. And the ID is join room, and when we go to the HTML, we can see that it matches the ID of the first button that I had here. Let me show you that again. Join the room here, ID join room. When I click it, it will make a GET request to join room, and this GET request will send a merge fragment event, and it will swap the button with the ID join room with this new button, just like that. So this is much better because we're not lying about the state of the request. If the user is seeing this updating, it cannot be because of some error in the ways the variables are handled. It's really because the server is here trying to process this specific action. What we'll then do is put a while through, because it's an async generator, so it will keep an open connection running. No, I'm not sure it will keep an open connection, but the cool thing with Datastar is that we can just check this in the network tab. So okay, network, join a room, and join room is not an open connection yet. So what we are doing now, it's an open connection. By the way, you see here that we click the div, and we are now in the while through part with the open connection. This connection is server-sent event, so it has some retry and keep alive mechanisms to make sure it doesn't fail. It's quite robust, and what it is doing, it's returning in the div with ID rooms the list of rooms that we currently have in memory. So here we just create the HTML very basically here, and we just return that, and it gets merged into the DOM, and then we give back control to the main loop. This is a nice sync notion, but you'll get familiar with it, don't worry. So every 10 seconds this while true will loop again. So we have quite the frame rate here, but we can see that if I open a new browser, and I create a new room, for example, new room. No, it needs to be lowercase, sorry. New room. I'm the admin of new room, and in max 10 seconds the loop will do again. And here you can see that the new room was just added here. If you take a look at the responses, that is exactly what you can see. Every 10 seconds we will have a Datastar match fragment sent to us, and with the new and updated list of rooms here. If you want, you can click on the network request in the browser and see it updated in real time, and you will see that every 10 seconds we receive this server sent event with the new list of rooms, and Datastar will see that we want to use merge fragment, that we provided an ID, and we'll do the morphing into the DOM with the new list of rooms, just right here. Okay, two last things before we move on. First, the way you have to structure your response. So the way you make a Datastar response is that you provide the generator function here into your make response function, and you provide the SSE headers that are provided by the Datastar library, but these are just really simple headers. Just keep alive a text event stream that you can see here. The second thing is that polling kind of has a bad press, and you kind of want to do it live, and don't worry, we'll do that just after, but it's very efficient. You can do polling every 0.1 second and your server won't break a sweat over it. And you will see, I will just show you can make like near instantaneous rooms like this. So let's call it the quick room, and you will see just how quick up it just appear here. The downside is that because you're polling, you're gonna be sending a lot of unnecessary data to the client. Like every 0.1 second, I will be sending the whole list of room again to the websites, and we can see here on network, it hasn't begun to record yet. So let me do that again. Yeah, we can see here that this request is, it bubbles up quickly. We're sending a lot of data. Okay, so now let's try creating a room. What happens when I type the room here? You can see that the room was created, that I'm the admin of it, and you can also see that the URL changed. So how does Datastar handle it? What happens when I click create room? I send a post request to this address on my server. You can see here that it's quite the same as the get request. It's data on click all the same, and I just specify another route. Here you can see another use of Datastar, where if the server hasn't validated the name, I am not able to use the button. I give it the disabled attribute. So once again, a nice example of Frontend reactivity that is validated by the server. And we see that when I create a room, now that I made the post request, I don't look at the arguments. It will just be a request to this address, and the Datastar variables will be passed as the body request, the body of the request on a JSON format. So I can just await request.json to get all the data, and I get a JSON object with all my Datastar variables. The one I'm interested in is input value, of course. because that's the room name that the user wants to create. If it's empty, if it's not valid, I can do a validation, I can uppercase it, I can use all the backend actions I want. And what I will do is that I will create some room data, so for the purpose of not importing anything, I'm just saving it as JSON on the server. And what I will do here is give the user a queue. We will get back to it later. The important thing here is just the third and last function of the server-sent event generator, which is execute script, where I will redirect the user to its room. So /room/room name, and this will execute JavaScript that will redirect your user. You can execute arbitrary JavaScript with Datastar, just return it with this function execute script. So merge signals, merge fragments, and execute scripts will be the main functions you will be using with Datastar. Now this root room.room name is a simple URI root. We are checking that everything is alright here with the name of the root, and then what we do is another queue initiation, but we will see that later. And what we do is we render the template for the room. Let me show that to you. The template for the room is quite simple actually. It's just this. We just pass the room name in the signals of the page, because why not? We can do that as well with Datastar. And we say onload. That means when this div is loaded into the DOM, send a request to post at the address friend room. And this is a way of doing that you will be doing a lot with Datastar. Is just you have a div that will open a connection, and then based on the Datastar signals values, you will stream the events in real time and the parts of the DOM that you want to replace. So this is exactly what we are doing here. We can see that here we prepare the div with ID buzzer. So this will, you guessed it, be populated afterwards by Datastar. We have this little code snippet I haven't shown you before, but this is how you display the signals in your page. And then we have this whole script which I created with ChatGPT, which is a custom element for the buzzer, but let's not bother about it. What we just need to know is that when the room is loading and while I'm initiating the connection, I'm also passing JavaScript code so that the user can create this custom element. I'm not sure about the right way to say it. What is happening in this room? This is a more advanced way of doing with Datastar, but you'll be seeing it a lot, so let's get familiar with it. So of course we get the user ID, we get the room name, we load the room data for the room here, and then we create our generator that will run during the lifetime of the connection. We use stream with context, which is a Quart decorator to pass the request context to the event generator, to the async function that we are defining here. and we say, well, if the user matches the person that created the room, then we can merge a fragment on main. So we will just replace all main, and we say that, good morning, you're the admin of this room, and we can send some signals. We prepare a div called people, which we will use to show the admin the list of people who are connected, and we add the ability to buzz the people who are connected to your room. And what is interesting is the while-through part, because once we have sent this first, we are waiting for the queue that we defined earlier. We are waiting for someone to connect. The way we do this is with an async queue. So we just created here. When someone created the room, we gave them a queue, and in this queue you can just put the fragments of the people as they arrive to notify the admin of the room. And if there is nothing in the queue, the fact that we use await and an async queue will give back control to the main loop and say, well, wake me up whenever somebody connected. So the server goes back to its own business and just wait for something to happen here. And when somebody joined the room, it will put a fragment in this queue, and we just merge the fragment afterwards. Here you can see that I don't use sse.mergeFragments, I use generator. Here, this is because of the way the SDK, the Python SDK is made. It will take care of setting the timeout of the request to none. It will take care of the make response and adding the SSE headers. So basically, make Datastar response events with your event being a function of a generator, or using SSE to make a response with an empty event and then putting timeout now and returning this response are, to my knowledge, basically equivalent. You can do it either way. I found that I use SSE more because sometimes I don't want to set the timeout to none. For example, here I just want to execute a script to a location. I don't want the connection to last. When we return the merge signal on validate name as well, I don't want the connection to stay open. I just send what I have to send and then I'm done with it. So I find that SSE is more versatile. You do your own way. So this was for the admin part, and for the user part, well, if someone wants to join the room, we use a function to add them to the room, and then we put in the queue for the admin the fragment we were talking about earlier. So it's just a div with the user ID of the person that joined, and this is what I will be showing you. We are now the admin of the what room, and if somebody joins the what room, yes, you can see that the div with ID people was updated with the new fragment that was put in the queue right there. So we have the user ID of the person right there. One last thing is the cancelled error from your async framework. So you can use it to break from the while true loop, which is keeping the connection open, and you can do some stuff. For example, here, when somebody cancels their connection, I want to put in the queue of the admin a fragment saying that this user disconnected, and we can see that Véronique Lemoine, if she closes her window, you can see that she disconnected. So you really get a lot of information that way. Back to the code. Now we will see a demo of using your web component with the root buzz. So this root buzz was given to the admin when I sent them the button when they created the room, so the button buzzed them, that we can see right here. And when I click on this button, what I will do is just get all the people that are in that room and send them a fragment with a buzzer. So the buzzer is the web component that I defined earlier on the page. It has a random delay as part of its properties to add some spice to this very basic game. And we can see that we need here some kind of publishing and subscribing system. So I made a very basic one that is you just register every time who is talking to who in which room, and then you put it in the right queue. There are a lot of libraries that you can use to do that, but I just don't want it to import anything at first. So either way, you implement it how you want, but the principle will be the same. Just everybody is waiting for some event to happen. We can see that normal users, guests to the room, are waiting on their queue. The admin is waiting on his own queue as well. So everybody is waiting from something from different async queues, and you just populate it with the fragments that you want, and they will receive it as soon as the server, the main loop, reaches back to this point of the function. You can see here that we now use data on time, not data on click, not data on input, data on time. Time will be an event that will be created by the MyBuser custom elements. So you can use custom events and use them with Datastar. And I think that it's really powerful. I created this somewhat contrived example to show it, but when the buzzer is clicked, it will raise a time event, and this time event will be called by Datastar to change the value of buzz with the detail of the event, that is how fast the detail I put in the MyBuzzer component is how fast the buzzer was clicked, and send a post request. So you can see here, this is a classic JavaScript syntax. So when you use data on, you can queue different things as well. This is important to keep in mind. When buzzed is clicked, I show a div called well done, so I can notify the user that he can stop clicking or something happened, and then I send an empty response, because when I click on buzz them, I don't need to return anything, and I can just do that with Datastar. There's no problem. I just populate my queues to get my pub/sub mechanism rolling and return an empty response, and that's it. And everybody with an open connection will get the events. So let's see how that works in principle. Véronique Lemoine, she disconnected. It is the what room. The what room. All right, Janlacombe join. Can we see the point of view of Janlacombe, for example? If I go to network here, I refresh the page, and we can see that it's like a disconnect and join. This is quite important. For example, we saw that when I create a room, I first send some fragments, then I get the connection running. If I refresh the page, it will send the first events back. So for example, here you can see that color is beige papaye. If I refresh the page, color is bleu violet, so color change. This is somewhat important to get. I will show you the corresponding piece when I use BuzzRoom. Here, in my generator, first I yield the data signals color with a fake color name, and then I run a while loop to keep the connection open. But if I refresh, it will start the event generator again. Something important to keep in mind, this is why the color name changed right here. If you want some data to persist, there is an option in Datastar to do that. You have data persist, I guess. Just look at the documentations if you want more. So, Janlacombe, can you join again? We can see that the run room connection is running. It's this connection right here. I will expand it a bit. It's a long running connection. All right. This run room here. Let's see. I can send the buzzer. You see, it's still the same connection from which she received the buzzer right here. And yeah, on this connection, it is a post, so I'm not allowed to see it that way. The connection reopens when I press back. I can send a buzzer, and well, it's getting a bit contrived. Oh, we can see here that she is getting the HTML that I want right here. And when I click the buzzer up, it creates an event called time, and on time I will send a post request to time, but the event came from the web component right here. This is what allows me to see how fast she responded, and because they are running in a loop and there are these pub-sub mechanisms, I can do this all day if I want to. Here you can see that we are sending a post request to time. Whenever the buzzer is clicked, you can see that in the signals I have my pub-sub mechanism, so it will be included in the post request to time. And by now you just figured out, it's really simple. We just get the body of the request as JSON, we get the info we need for the pub-sub mechanism, we put some information in the corresponding queue. So this is the user ID responded or in how many milliseconds, and we return an empty value. So this is it. This concludes this video about Datastar. It's a really great framework. I would encourage you to check it if you can. It's a really good server about hypermedia. I really like the ideas behind it. I really like the idea that it's basically just some regex and glue codes, and the goal is just to leverage the browser abilities to render HTML fast. So I would really encourage you to go on their website, datastar.dev, check the examples. They have some really great examples. You can do a lot of stuff with Datastar. And more importantly, I would encourage you to build something with it, because it's the only way, I guess, you can learn. And there are some great videos that you can see. The interviews of Datastar are quite great, but I would encourage you to build your own stuff to kind of get the feeling of how to build with Datastar. I really like the idea that when you go to their guide, one of the mottos is stop overcomplicating it, and when they say here, most of the time if you run into issues when using Datastar, you are probably overcomplicating it. It's true. Most of the time you really just have to switch your mental model. You just have to think about, well, when do I want to open a connection, and what do I want to stream, and where do I want it to be placed on the DOM? How can I let my backend do the processing, and each part of reactivity I can put in the frontend? It's really a novel way to think about it. Now, would I recommend using Datastar in production? This is hard because I come from HTMX, which is, I guess, simpler to get the feeling of hypermedia. Just to give you an example, a while ago I made this chess game, which is running in like pure, this is pure HTMX. So you can go quite far with just pure HTMX. You don't need Datastar until you really want to have open connections and think about it in a reactive way. If you don't want to do polling, for example. So the other thing is that you have to get to grasp an async framework, and this will be my other concern, is that when you start writing all these while loops, while true loops, you will mess it up, and that's why I say it again, it's really important to start building with it. And you can hear the fans of your computer going wild. And if I am working on a remote server, I don't know, I need to have some monitoring about what happens, or make it so simple that I'm sure nothing breaks. And I think HTMX is great for that. It's just you have some routes, you just send stuff back. You don't deal with keeping connections open and managing their live state. But this is because I'm kind of new to this world of hypermedia development. If you have some more experience, I guess you can go with it. And if you don't have experience, go build with it. It's the only way you're gonna acquire some, I guess. So this was that. I hope you like it. You can find the code in the description. The link to the GitHub repo will be in the description. You can leave a comment if you like that. I am planning to continue using Datastar though. because even if I said what I said about it, that it's maybe not the most beginner-friendly framework, it is powerful, like really powerful. I will try to see how far I can get it, because my goal is to build games with real-time service endurance. I guess it's the perfect use case for what I want. I also like the fact that it's more powerful than HTMX and Alpine combined in just one framework. There are a lot of things to say about Datastar. It's definitely quite interesting. I would encourage you to check it. I will really encourage you to build something with it, and if you like this video, leave a comment, and maybe I will show you the other apps that I built with it. And if you have any questions, you can drop them in the comments as well. And see you.